Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon. Well, folks, both Scott Allen and I are many things in life. Thank goodness. We live a very interesting life. But what drew us together in recent time was that we're both podcasters. Now, when I started out being a podcaster for Peter Vale, so that we could capture Peter Vale's thoughts while he was still up and about regarding to talking about practice, I think there were only a few. I only knew a few podcasters in the world, and relative to now, and I didn't know any other academics who were podcasting. So somewhat later, I discovered Scott's work through LinkedIn, and we reconnected. We'd known each other through the Organization Behavior Teaching Society and Eastern Academy. At least we knew of each other, but we found this common interest called podcasting. And so I thought it would be fun for Scott and me to address this question. Since Scott's been addressing leadership and I've been seeking the nature of practice through conversation, what has changed in our lives, and how have we changed as human beings? So, Scott, welcome.
Thank you, sir. It's so good to be with you. So good to be with you. And yes, we have this mutual love for this project that we've discovered.
Yeah, it is a project. It continually takes us out into uncertainty, which is the nature of a project.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Have you felt change in Scott Allen over these months that you've been found? You're up to almost 200 episodes, and so
Yes. I think I'm probably at about, in the can, so to speak, about 170.
Yeah.
And, in preparation for this conversation, it's allowed me some opportunity to reflect, and it has changed me. It's changed me. I think I have written down in front of me 5 distinct ways that I am a different individual than maybe I was 2 years ago, roughly maybe it's almost 3 years ago now that we started.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, it has been so much fun. And I think that's primarily, it has helped me. Probably the most important thing, Dave, that I think I've landed on is I have just this love for the word curiosity, and it has fueled my curiosity. It's fueled it in a really, really cool way, in a really nice medium. And I'm learning from experts from around the world, but it's so amazing. And you might feel this way too. I have the conversation, and sometimes, of course, I remember the conversation, but I don't remember the details of it always. And then I listen back and it kind of solidifies in my mind, and I edit. And so sometimes people have said, well, why are you spending so much time? Because it's, an episode's 4 hours, roughly.
Easily 4 hours. Yeah. Lining it up too and getting the person in place. And you can throw a couple more hours in there too,
Exactly.
So it's a day.
It's sometimes just even the time zone conversions. I'm recording tomorrow night with a couple of folks in New Zealand. And so professors there, we're going to talk about Jacinda Ardern and kind of her stepping down and what she's experienced as a leader, just the horrible experiences, the abuse that she's experienced online. But yes, just even sometimes figure out the time zones. That's a good 20 minutes. But, I think ultimately, and I can go into the detail of some of these other things, but you are a curious individual as well. And I mean, does it fill that cup, that curiosity cup for you as well?
Never full. Uh, it is, well, it started me teaching before I was even legally able to teach. Started teaching swimming when I was 11 or 12.
Wow.
In the YMCA. And you're not supposed to be teaching, in quotes, supposed to be, until at least you're 15 or 16. But I was more fascinated with the process of getting kids off the wall, as we called it, out of utter fear of the water and into the water and acclimated. And it just meant a lot to me to be part of getting them off the wall.
Yes.
But there was no one kid who did it exactly like another.
Yes.
So even back then, as I recall, and I'd go, I wonder why I could get, Bobby, come on in the water, Bobby, and he'll come over and jump in. And then Bill would be pasted into the wall and, with arms out, refusing to move. We're talking about 4 or 5-year-old kids. And so that started then. And so it's been a long time that I have had the same curiosity as a teacher and as an investigator, I guess. Why are people so different, yet it looks on the surface like they're the same? And the other half of that curiosity is what moves one? What does an external influencer like myself do? What did I do and say that moved one and not the other? Dave, so it was a constant adjusting of the relationship, is even if it was only a temporary relationship, to stay with that person so that I could get beyond the first fearful reaction and get to know them more wholly as a really interesting person. So that takes me immediately to podcasting.
Well, your story right now, we have another thing in common, although it's not swimming, it's diving. And so,
that one, I couldn't get people off the
board. But that's so fascinating, because I was a diver my whole high school career.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Then I coached throughout college. So I coached a local high school team. And your story resonates with me because, yes, I had 13 young women on the diving team, 7th through 12th grade. And for some of them, I just, I figured out that I just had to kind of let them be on their own for the whole meet. Or for others, I just had to only be positive, like, you're going to do great.
Yeah.
You can do this.
Yeah.
For others, it was very factual. Think about this, this, and this. And for others, I could be pretty blunt. I could say, look, you're in second place. We need 8s. And that's what we need on this dive. And you can do it. You have it in you. But you are exactly right. There was a little bit of a different recipe that worked for each one of those. And I viewed my role as adapting to what it was they needed. Now, Did I always succeed at that? No. Did I fail? Yes. It took time to better understand them and actually talk with them about what they felt they needed. Yeah. But yes, everyone was a different little puzzle.
Well, let's look at what you were asking your divers and I was asking my free swimmers to do. It was to get into a totally different environment than on land or on board. Even the divers knew that, they knew the pool well. They could never know for sure if the last flip was going to be smooth and in like a knife, or whack and hurt like hell.
Yes.
And there's no certainty there. And there was no certainty as if I get off this wall and get in that water, and look, they're putting their faces in the water. That's horrifying.
Yes.
So it was moving people toward a point of courage.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing what you're saying too.
Yes.
Particularly the one who had to get the 8, how do they amp up that courageousness long enough to go ahead and release themselves from that fear. And and I do think that does bring us to the question of how we've changed and not changed. If you and I, by huge coincidence, learned a lot about teaching coaching in a swimming pool.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are a number of years later. So that part of us that believes that we can not necessarily convince someone else to release themselves from their fear, but at least are sensitive to the differences in how people do that. So we're not putting out blanket influences to try to get people to move ahead.
Yes.
Then maybe that's also why, along with that early curiosity about teaching swimming, is I really gravitated to the question of leadership, because I was at the YMCA.
Yes.
And that's what I was going by the time I was in high school, that's what I wanted to do for a career, because we had a big thrust about leadership. We were teaching about it. We were talking about it all the time. Why camping was leadership, leadership, leadership. I heard the word thousands of times before I even got into college. And of course, became a sociology major to get to have more context for it. I still, honestly, and I've listened to more than several of your podcasts, I think that's another one of those ephemeral things. We think we know leadership. We can pin it down. We can write a paragraph. We can even write a book about it, as many fine people have. And yet there's something about it that's still just a little bit beyond. It's sort of like looking at the end of the diving board. We get concreteness all the way to the end of that board. And then there's this other atmosphere that we have to leave the board to get into. And therefore, I'll not torture this analogy much longer. We do have an experience of leadership. Mm-hmm. And so that gives us more of a clue as to the nature of leadership.
Well, I think a fundamental attribute of anyone who's in a position of authority. Okay, so that could be a parent, it could be a coach, I think it could be a minister, a pastor, priest, rabbi, a person of faith. It could be an individual who's an educator. I think that what Heifetz would call adaptive nature, or the agile nature of us having flexibility as the context shifts, I think that's one of the core lessons. That, again, for some reason, I had the awareness that I needed to do different things with these 13 different young women, that different things worked for each of them. And I was curious. Again, some people love Sudoku, some people love Wordle. I love the puzzle of people. And my undergrad was not business. My undergrad was marriage and family therapy. It was family social science. And so small group systems, what creates a healthy small group system? And of course, there's a number of wonderful parallels then to teams and to leadership.
Sure.
But you and I were speaking earlier, being adaptive as a parent is incredibly important, because what worked 3 weeks ago doesn't work now. So there's an improv. And are you expecting everyone? I have colleagues and have had colleagues who expect every Gen Z or every millennial to adapt to their style. Well, their style puts people to sleep.
and now I think we're talking about why you and I are podcasters.
Yes.
And I can tell you that in all the years that in the collegiate setting, from the very first hour of the very course I started on, organization behavior, when I was a doctoral student at UConn, I've never, ever taught the same way twice, day after day.
No,
that doesn't mean I'm throwing one thing away and starting over. I mean, every lesson, even if I'd done it, well, after a while, I taught the same course a few times, I couldn't do it. I could not take a boilerplate approach to teaching. No, because that would lock me in.
Yes.
And that's what I was afraid of. I would lock myself in to routine, to comfort of knowing that, well, at least if I say and do this, it's going to have this effect. I like to be, my curiosity
Yes.
kept me trying new stuff,
Yes.
which then drew me into the very early days of experiential teaching and learning, with Peter Vail being one of the great influences of that. But I sought out people within the Eastern Academy of Management, and we formed the Experiential Learning Association. Why was that such an attraction to me? Because I got to do fresh stuff, bring fresh stuff, new exercises,
Yes.
new outlooks, and that fulfilled me.
Yep.
But not quite enough. See, that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
All those years, I would try all that stuff. And honestly, it wasn't just for my own enlightenment and amusement. I felt that it was good for people to help them free themselves to try something new, to think something in a different way, and even read the same paragraph of a definition, like what is leadership, and then come at it 16 different ways.
Yeah.
Not to upset them, but to show them that the fun that I had with ideas and people with ideas could be a great part of their career too. And to your point about adaptivity, necessary.
Yes.
In the world that I anticipated, even in the 60s, being part of that wild and woolly time of the 60s, I knew that things were not going to stay the same.
Yeah.
There's just no way.
Yep.
So many of the sort of rigors of what we were taught about management from the standpoint of Taylor and all those folks, I was quite convinced that those so-called rules or principles or laws weren't going to last very long.
No.
And have been challenged crazily. So, yeah, that whole feeling of, well, let's see, I've done that. What about this? Now, is that you too? Because I think it is.
100%. 100%. And I can honestly say I've never taught the same course twice. And there's the learning that comes from the students. Obviously I'm paying close attention to what's happening in the room, and I'm paying close attention to the results I'm getting back, whether it's on exams or more experiential oriented exams. I'm paying close attention to what's coming back in the paper that I had assigned. And is it what I'm looking for, or is it wildly off? What do I need to own in that miss, right? If I'm getting a paper back that everyone's missing the mark, well, obviously I have something to own in that I wasn't clear enough in a certain way of what I was hoping to achieve. But then my secret sauce, and again, I'm not perfect at this, but every semester I ask the students, okay, what went well? What should I do more of? What did you dislike? What should I do less of? What should I consider in the future? And I get all kinds of great feedback. And if at the end, the students are saying, oh, I couldn't stand the textbook and this was awesome, but I hated that. Well, I know I'm creating an environment where they feel like they can give me feedback.
There you go.
And then that feedback informs the next iteration. And that feedback keeps me on the cutting edge of what's energizing them and what's not energizing them. So for instance, when I started the podcast, it was in part, at least what I told myself at the time was, well, we're going to be online for a while. Why not add this into the arsenal, so to speak, of different methods to convey information? So if I've had a conversation with Barbara Kellerman or Ron Riggio or Dave, I can weave that into some of what we're doing in preparation for class or some of the homework. And that became part of the arsenal, so to speak. But then I had to ask students for feedback. Do you like this? Is it something that's helpful for you? Are you enjoying? Oh, I love it. I can work out and I can accomplish the task, or I can go on a walk and I can go on a run or a jog and I can accomplish this. A few people said they didn't like it. So if it's all podcasts, then that doesn't work as well. But if it's 3 or 4 sprinkled in, it's something a little bit different. And then it's a Netflix documentary, 3 or 4 of those. And then maybe it's a feature film. And so in the course design, I look at it as a blend. Yeah. And I'm constantly asking for that feedback, and I don't agree with all of it, and I don't change because of some of it, but it's data, and it informs the next iteration, right?
I can't imagine being a curious person and not want feedback.
Yeah,
that's because there's always a price to curiosity. Some things don't work, and they like like a big wet fish, they slap you across the face. And my hypothesis, or my conjecture, to pitch the book a little bit, my conjecture is that some of us as academic persons are reluctant for that kind of feedback because we don't want to be hurt. We don't want to be shamed even.
Yep.
There's probably more psychology than that, but it's just a matter of degree as to how far out into that mixing and blending and trying things one will go. Now, probably you've heard the same feedback from some faculty as I used to, which is, Dave, you spend too much time. Your courses are too complex. I was the first one to try the different learning system platforms that were coming out and all that, and trying to constantly integrate them. And you don't have time for this is one quote that I can almost be sure of.
Yeah.
You put so much time into your teaching that you do not have enough time to publish. And I was at a school where we were looking for ACSP certification for like 30 years. So of course they wanted publications, and I had some, but that wasn't why I was there. That wasn't why I got up every morning enthused about driving 32 miles to get to school, particularly in the winter.
Yep.
And it was let's see how this works out.
Yes.
At 8 o'clock in the morning, because I'm going to try this, and I'm adjusting that. So I was always the rate buster, if you will, and among more cautious and conservative faculties across my whole career, not just in my last school. Yeah. And that's okay.
Yep.
I mean, I live with it. Have you heard similar feedback from your colleagues over time?
Well, I love being at the institution that I'm at because
context matters.
It values, classroom, scholarship, service. And then they also value me being out in the community. My whole job is not writing papers. If it were, I wouldn't be in the profession. For me personally, I thrive on the blend. I thrive on the blend of being in the classroom, the consulting work, the writing, the podcasting, and the other aspects and some of the service aspects that I have going on. I absolutely get fired up about. But if it wasn't that blend, if it was just one of those things, then for me, I wouldn't be fueled the way I am. So I have heard that. I love the writing. It took me a long time to figure out the type of writing where I thrive. And once I figured that out a little more closely, then I kind of locked in. But it's hard for me to give a class to someone that's never taught it, because to your point, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of just tacit knowledge of what works and what doesn't, and how to enter this space, how to set the tone here, how to give a cautionary, comment to the students so they expect that this might go wrong. I know. And so that can be very difficult to just pass off a class, because the person I'm passing it off to is like, where are the slides and the lecture notes, and what book are you using? And I'm like, well, there are no slides. There's a Canvas website that has a bunch going on. Yeah. And let me sit down with you for a couple hours and explain how this works. Yeah. But yes, what resonates for me, Dave, is that the shadow of that curiosity and the shadow of really, really trying to create unique learning experiences is that, all break. I have an event coming up this spring where we have 60 alumni from our MBA program coming back to watch presentations.
Wonderful.
Now, that evening is just going to be incredible to see 60 of our alums who have been invited. They said, yes, on a Friday night, I want to come and watch current MBA presentations, and they want to be there. They want to participate. And that's going to be incredible. And, just like podcasting, it takes time to recruit 60. So I'm creating a monster for myself oftentimes, because I'm not just walking in, turning on the computer, showing some slides, and then leaving after 50 minutes and not thinking about it again. I put things into motion with so many moving parts that sometimes, I wear myself out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a terrible boss.
Well, yeah, I think we should both congratulate ourselves as we are doing right now. But I also think there were times that I will admit that I had the pain shooting up the arm kind of thing, like, what have I done? And I've overextended. And then I fortunately have a spouse who's known me since the 5th grade, who knows when I'm getting that close to doing too much and saying yes to too much. And then she reminds me that I should have a head the size of my hat. Come on, just calm down, take it easy. Yeah.
So the shadow of that curiosity can be, again, everything's always changing. It's always new. It's more work. It's more learning. It's never just locked into place. No, but again, I wouldn't want to be that professor, so to speak. There's certain things are still locked into place, but it's, again, I view these courses as a blend and as a recipe almost. And is the recipe yielding the taste or the results that I hope it will? I always tell students, I hope this is the best class you've ever taken. Yeah. Ever, of any grade at any level. I hope this is the best. If it's not, and it won't be for some of you, help me get there. I want your feedback. You can't hurt my feelings. I just want people to leave this class feeling like it was an incredible experience. That's my goal. And please help me get there so that we can provide students with a great learning experience that ultimately prepares them to better serve in leadership roles, right? That's what I'm passionate about.
It's the outcome of the outcome of the outcome is those 16 alums who are coming back. Yeah. And to hear directly from them how they've continued to navigate or at least paddle down the white water, as Peter would say. Yes. It's very gratifying because they can attribute some of the reason that they have stopped and thought and done something differently to some moment that you created in the classroom, or I did.
Exactly.
But why? But I'm sorry to break the flow here, but I think we're outliers in doing what we're doing right now. And I have always had this sense of not indignation, but righteousness sometimes. I have known many very smart, very articulate colleagues who I said would be great as guests, but also as podcasters. Why? Why do I believe that? Because in our field in particular, we're very conversational. Yeah. I mean, and I suppose that would be true of even in the more in the STEM side, conversational. Sure. But we, because of our keen interest in human behavior and as they behave in as organizations, we do an awful lot of talking and listening. And what I have found in my podcasting is it's different than yours. Your focus is to find people who have done a lot of thinking and writing and talking about leadership. And I think that's so needed. What happened to me as I broke out is that when Peter and I chose something as large as practice, but something that's not well known as such, I could talk to anyone in these podcasts. And I have.
Yes,
Honestly,
you have.
and so it's different in that regard. But what is the same in every case for me, for my podcast, is I was asked this by a woman who had been a corporate manager and then has now retired and become a very good painter. And she said to me once, Kate Emery, who's been on my podcast twice, once when she was a corporate person and now that she's a painter.
Oh,
and she
great.
said, what are you finding out about doing these podcasts? Because you do them with so different many people. What's your focus? And I said, that's exactly what it is. It's focus. For 30 minutes or so, I have someone who's had a whole life behind him and a whole life ahead of him. And I'm giving my listeners a very, almost like a, not even a portrait. It would be more like not a caricature either. A quick sketch.
Yeah.
Sort of outlining some of their features.
Yep.
The way someone who would do that before they start a big painting.
Yep.
And what comes through is a different visage every time. Even people I thought I knew very well, like I'm getting to know you. Something new comes out. Now we're back to discovery and curiosity again. And then after we turn off the recording, I'm sure you've heard this, they say, geez, I didn't even know I thought that.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not like I dragged something out of them. We were engaged. We were having some give and take. And and so I am a sort of a sketch artist. And I think you have more, I hate to say this about myself, but you have a great deal more depth of what you're accomplishing in yours. You mentioned that you'll be talking to colleagues in New Zealand who have observed a very historic moment in the life of a leader, the prime minister. Yeah. And that's serious stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
So why are you more channeled in that direction, Scott?
Well, I wouldn't say it's any more. I think it's just different from what your focus is. And it's my passion. I just have jet fuel for this topic of how do we better prepare people to serve in these roles, that whether it's Jacinda Ardern or the president of the fraternity on campus at 2 a.m. on a Friday night, how do we better prepare them to be able to intervene skillfully, to do well, to do that work, to help make it better? And I don't know that we currently do that as well as we could. I don't think we have research that's suggesting that we're knocking it out of the park. And so that puzzle fascinates me. And so I view this whole adventure as a hunt. You know, what are those big pieces of the puzzle? What are the corner pieces and the edge pieces and the central pieces? What are some of the big pieces of the puzzle? And sometimes I might be having a conversation with someone about humor and leadership. It might be a smaller piece, but that's potentially a piece if we're talking about charisma and attracting others and connecting with others. And the role of humor is a piece of the puzzle.
Definitely.
And so there's just that real intense passion for putting that into focus and better understanding. And it just so happens that the medium of talking with people about their work or their passion is a medium that I just absolutely love. It's better than reading a journal article. Now, I will go read the journal article, but I want it to come to life. I want to talk with someone. I want to hear what they think was interesting about that work and why it was important. Yeah. And so it's that kind of singular focus for the question, how do we better prepare people to serve in these really challenging roles, regardless of level? because it's not easy, and it's getting more and more complex as things like with Jacinda Ardern, the social media and the just toxic nature of communications, literally from anywhere in the world, literally from not even your people, but it's just it's a shift, and we're going to lose great people who are saying, why would I subject myself to that? And they're going to opt out of some of these very, very important roles. So,
boy, that's scary and true. And thinking ahead of the implications of that anywhere in the world, it basically opens those roles to the crazy folk, and who
are willing to put up with it, or
that
just
couldn't possibly happen in our country, in our House of Representatives. Yeah, I know.
And you're pragmatic realists. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, but just those genuine pragmatic, like, I want to do some good and work across the aisle and collaborate and make things better. They become more and more of a rare bird. Yeah. And the narcissists and the individuals who, will openly subject themselves to that in pursuit of power, they emerge out of the woodwork. And so it's just so interesting to me. Again, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, are we getting good, pragmatic, collaborative, level-headed individuals to work to make things better? And unfortunately, the context out there is not for the faint of heart.
Not at all. And so your work is not done, right? And even someone say, well, you're only teaching 100 or so people a semester, Scott. That's a tiny, tiny drop in the bucket. But one thing that I have learned, since I'm many years older than you, is that one of those 100, 30 years from now, is going to be in the absolute key moment that turns things from worse to better.
Yes.
You just don't know. So this notion, if I taught 50,000 people at the same time, that somehow that would move things, maybe, but only shortly. But that concentration that we get to have as teachers, and we don't have thousands of listeners. I'd love to, but the folks who are listening and regularly, we're changing with them. Yep. They're hearing us change right in the middle of our conversation. They'll hear us see something and go, "Oh, I hadn't thought of that."
Yes.
So we're having influence on the few, but I believe in that Pareto notion that 20% of any sample you're looking at can have close to 80% of the impact. And so that's where I think podcasting helps, because it is, as your student said, a medium that they can take anywhere.
Yes. And so at the beginning of course this spring, I had them listen to 2 episodes that I did with a younger leader. Her name is Sarah Safari.
Oh, yeah.
She's incredible. And, to try and bring them in. And then they watched a Netflix documentary that she was in called Aftershock, which provided a visual. And, okay, so this is leadership, huh? This is
that could be me, says the person in their third row. Yes. She or he's looking at that and saying, well, why not me?
Yes.
So I think we're doing good work, Scott Allen. I'm going to keep podcasting. Are you?
Of course. It's just been an absolute love. I mean, there's probably 7 or 8 different benefits that really, as I reflect on, it's built my network in a really, really nice way. It's, I just, again, think of a wonderful scholar like Barbara Kellerman. I can send Barbara a note and say, "Hey, Barbara, we haven't talked for a while. What do you want to chat about?" And she'll say, "Oh, let's talk about my person of the year, And so she's going to come on maybe next week and we'll talk about what she's thinking about lately. And so from a network standpoint, it's systematized my learning. Every week I'm kind of having my butt kicked because I had the former president of Croatia, the first female president of Croatia. We've recorded the episode. I haven't published it yet, but literally a student of mine last fall, she said, because I had a couple episodes, so she learned that I had a podcast, and she said, "Hey, I know the former president of Croatia. Would you like to talk with her?" And I said, "Yes."
Oh, no.
yes, please. So, speaking with a world leader like of that kind of role and that position and that level of authority, that was a fascinating conversation.
And it came from a student.
It came from a student, right? And so whether it's practicing communication, whether it's led to writing projects with different people from around the world. So it's been a really wonderful, and again, probably the two largest factors are the curiosity and the curiosity for that question that I mentioned earlier, is that each week there's conversations to help kind of further the pursuit of some of that question.
You never know what's going to happen.
The same way,
I certainly do.
Yeah.
The spontaneity is probably my big word.
Yes,
we certainly have been this time. Speaking though, you had some items. Have you covered all 5 of your free thoughts?
I think so. Yes. I mean, built my network, systematized my learning, practicing communication and improv, to your point just there, right? I mean, some guests, it's a really easy flowing conversation. Other guests, I'm pulling. Other guests want everything laid out. Guests,
I was going to say, how many of them tell me everything you're going to ask me in advance?
Yes, exactly.
And I say, well, that's not my...
And again, it's I've built relationships and friendships. So I'm about to jump onto a phone call with Jonathan Reams, and it's actually about a writing project. But we didn't know one another before the pandemic, or before.
You and I
yes,
will keep on podcasting.
Yes, exactly. 100%. There's so many wonderful components to it. And again, to your point, it's 4 or 5 hours per episode to really get it up and running. But it's time well spent. It really is. And it's building my own expertise.
Yes.
Because I can kind of be dangerous in a number of different conversations. It's right. I'm not an expert in, transfer of training like my guest from IU, but I know enough. And I've learned from one of the best in a little hour-long shot, and it's given me enough to reconsider. Oh, okay. I need to be thinking about that. That's one of the puzzle pieces. So
it is, and I know I'm going way over my time budget here, but that's okay, because I think people have to understand that probably what characterizes both of us as teachers in the organization world is that we cannot possibly know everything that anyone else we're talking with would know. Not even close.
But Dave,
we're generalists.
I would have said, do you know about leadership, Scott? If you would have asked me that 2.5 years ago, I would have said, yeah, I know a lot about leadership.
Yeah.
Well, now, I mean, it's completely put me in a place of, wow, there's whole worlds that I need to better understand, whether that's adult development theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion, whether that's transfer of training. That's a whole world of a topic.
So we find the people who know something about it. We get them on the mic.
Yeah.
We end up learning a bit more about it.
Yes.
And then we spread that out to the world. But I think that kind of service really in the world of ideas is pretty damn satisfying. So I have to congratulate you with a big C. Congratulations on having 170 of these done and more to come.
Yes.
It's an honor knowing you.
Well, and obviously the feeling is mutual. I mean, again, we may have talked about this the first time, but you are modeling exactly how I would hope to be. You are no longer in the classroom, but your curiosity, and you are having conversations, and you are contributing, and you are helping, and you are teaching. And again, back to that kind of agility, I think it's just, I have so much respect. I have so much respect. You have provided a example of exactly what I would want to be doing, right? When I'm no longer in the classroom, staying curious, engaging, and waking up every day with that purpose of, how can I make things a little bit better and help people better understand what's going on, right?
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's truth.
We'll do another one of these. We have to.
Okay. I'd like that.
Thanks for listening to the Practice Podcast, where we discuss practice with a capital P. If you'd like to hear more, listen in on Spotify, Automatic, and Apple Podcasts, or go to enactionresearch.com/podcast-page. And if you'd like to learn more about social inaction and the nature of practice, head over to enactionresearch.com for more information. Thank you for supporting this show. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Oh, how could I have forgotten? Our digital book on practice as a way of being is now available. You'll find it online at mylibrary.world. I worked on that book after Peter passed away, and I think you will find it a unique and very, very mobile reading experience, since it's wherever your screen is in hand or at hand.